Joining us today is a power couple, a team that have given their career and their life's work to this very purpose. Dr. Linda and Terrance Peterson. Dr. Terrance Peterson is a trained educator and a certified administrator with over 30 years of experience in helping individuals and organizations set and achieve positive goals for change. He's also a national presenter and a life coach, guiding groups and individuals on topics such as overcoming trauma, managing stress, and building cohesive teams, understanding the teenage brain, and strengthening family dynamics, as well as creating equitable practices. At the heart of his message is a powerful truth. Real change starts within. By recognizing our own self-worth, we can begin to overcome barriers and build healthier, more resilient communities. Along with us today is his counterpart, Dr. Linda Peterson. Dr. Linda Peterson is Executive Director of Changes Therapeutic Services, with 2 locations in Maryland Heights and St. Louis, Missouri, and St. Charles, Missouri. As a licensed psychotherapist in the state of Missouri, Dr. Peterson's company provides clinical mental health services, family counseling, marriage counseling, advocacy for special education services, professional development service to schools, churches, and organizations across Missouri. She also offers supervision and training to schools and clinical therapists. Dr. Linda Peterson has been in this work for 20 years plus. Dr. Peterson's, plural, thank you so much for joining us today, and we're eager to learn more from your experience, your wisdom, and also to start. Could you share a bit about your backgrounds and what inspired your journey into this work?
Sure. Well, thank you for having us in the first place, Dr. Muhammad. I can start with a little bit about my background. I am an educator, as you stated, for over 30 years. I recently, about 3 years ago, I retired from education as a principal. I was a principal in the Rittner School District. I served as a teacher for 15 of those years, and I taught on multiple grade levels. So I taught 7th grade. I started with 7th grade, and I went to 8th grade, and then taught all the levels at the high school, taught some advanced classes. And from that experience of being a teacher, and I was an English teacher, from that experience, I learned a lot. But the number one thing that I learned is that how important it is to build those relationships with the students. To have that love for what you do comes from that connection that you have for the students. From that journey as a teacher, I became an administrator on the high school level, and I served there for about 4 years. And then I went to the elementary level, which was an eye-opener for me because I was a secondary administrator, and going to the elementary level was a very big shift, because those elementary teachers and educators are kind of charged with not only educating children, but also socializing, helping them to understand that. And so from that experience, I gained a lot of knowledge and understanding of how important it is to connect to that social, emotional piece of those children as well. I eventually transitioned to the middle school of where I started and became the principal of there. And then I served another 6 years, and then I retired from there. And now I work with my wife, my counterpart, the better half, for now running our business, Changes Therapeutic Services, for about 4 years.
Okay, very good. Dr. Linda Peterson, tell us a little bit about your background and your work.
Well, ours are a little similar, but I think that for me, I started as a child. Thinking about transitioning from one school district to another, right? So that led me to understand when I transferred to a school district in St. Louis that I wasn't seen, I wasn't heard. I didn't feel validated. I didn't feel as if there was rapport being built with me at a young age. So going through the school district that I graduated from here in Missouri, I went to high school understanding that I wanted to help. I wanted to serve. I wanted to give back. I wanted to make sure that people were, and teens, children, they had a voice. They had someone that they could connect with if it's just one person. So as I grew up, I went away to college. I wanted to be a nurse. Didn't want to have anything to do with education. And so I wanted to help in that way. Hated math, as every counselor knows. It's the reason we're counselors. We don't do math. So I transitioned into education and became a school counselor. And from there, I started in the city of St. Louis, and then I transitioned to St. Louis County School District, retired from there as a school counselor. I've taught special education. I've taught 3rd and 4th grade in a private school. And then I retired being a school counselor. In retirement, I started teaching classes at Missouri Baptist University as an adjunct. And so in doing that, I get to get a little bit in both worlds, right? So I get the educational piece of what do people need to know? What do they need to learn? What do therapists or clinical educators or just educators needed to know to work with our youth, our teens, our families, our communities? And so from there, I started being able to help from a clinical end and an educational end. So I really love what I do. And then that led me here to do the practice, which started while I was a school counselor. And so while I was a school counselor, I started part-time going to work on the weekends after church, seeing people in the evenings and being able to balance that. And in doing that, it grew. It grew, by the grace of God, because it wasn't me saying, I want this large practice. It was me saying, I have a heart for this work and for God to use me and lead me to where I wanted to go. So in doing that, it grew. I had school counselors across St. Louis, Missouri calling me saying, hey, can we come? Can you supervise me? Can you supervise me? Can you train us? Can you come talk to us? And so in doing that, I still work with the Missouri School Boards Association. I'm on a couple of boards there, and I'm on the equity board for inclusion for counselors to be able to work with kids in schools to make sure everyone is seen. What does that look like through our practice, right? And then I'm also on the ethics board, where school counselors across the state of Missouri sends us questions that they do not feel that their administrators over here, right? He was an administrator. You could tell how our house went growing up while we was married, while we're still married. But they would call and say, hey, my administrator wants me to do this. Is this what I should be doing? Or how do I advocate for this piece? And what can I say? So I still step in that role too. So like I said, I get it at both ends. I get the school counselor lens, still working with the kids and the babies and the families in the community. And then I get it from the clinical end from a private practice. But then I also get it from a state lens of what does school counseling and helping families and communities really look like, and what should it look like? So that's a long way of saying that's how I got into this work.
Just an amazing amount of wealth of knowledge and many years of experience. Can you tell me some of the most common challenges that teens and families face today, really when it comes to stress and when it comes to trauma?
Yeah, I can start with that. I know Linda is the clinical expert, but I've had my time around the block just dealing with students who come from trauma-filled backgrounds. One of the things when I think about trauma and some of the challenges that teens face of that, they kind of revolve around the things that contribute to trauma itself. So like that stress and, such as having to rely in a totally different environment from which we were raised, right? So when we were raised, there were things that helped us learn how to cope, learn how to manage, understand how the importance of socializing. But there are a different set of circumstances that some of our teens are dealing with now. Mainly social media, and not understanding how to connect to people, getting their worth or self-worth from images that they're being seen, that they're bombarded with images constantly about that. And that creates this whole, the paradox of that is that when you're working with social media, your whole goal is to gain friends, right? Quote unquote friends. But ironically, there are no true friends through social media, and so the name of friends, it's replacing the understanding of how to connect to people. One of the things that we talk about in the presentations we have, we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And of course, if you know anything about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the third need before we can get to self-actualization is the need to belong. The need to belong. And so when our children are kind of bombarded with those images and social media and they don't have those really true, deep connections, it creates this whole element of loneliness. and they think, well, I have 300 something friends, but are they really friends? I have this many likes, and so we say also in our presentations that the cell phones have replaced pacifiers. And if you don't believe that, think about it when you're out into a restaurant or anything like that, and you see a young child. In order to kind of like help them cope and compensate for things instead of letting them experience things themselves and talk to them about that, we a lot of times we give those children cell phones or iPads or things of that nature. So it's creating a very different kind of different landscape for our children to try to navigate.
Yeah.
And it creates that loneliness.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because when you're talking about overcoming trauma and building their resilience when it comes to what us families and teens face, it's really that we are not teaching them emotional regulation. We're not teaching them how to overcome difficulties, right? We're teaching them how not to worry about what we worry about, right? First things first, organization, one thing at a time, learning to build on their skills. And unfortunately, our teens are in a space where they are trying to understand who they are, peer pressure, where do you fit in, social acceptance, and what does that look like in a world where everything is an instant gratification, right? Belonging, like Dr. Peterson said, just understanding, where do I fit into this whole thing? But see, here's the real thing. I think the challenge for teens and families to get past the trauma and the stress is to understand it is trauma and stress. A lot of the times we take that trauma and stress and we make it normalized. And we normalize it and we go with, well, I'm just a mess. Well, yeah, you are a mess, but hello, it is something that we can do about that, right? You don't have to be a mess, right? Right now, if you turn on the TV, every 2 minutes, you're listening to some emotional dysregulation. You're not listening to just murder. You're listening to anger, pain, suffering, hopelessness, rage. And it's what our teens and families are facing on a day-to-day situation right now, that I don't think that they recognize that vicarious trauma is being sent with them to school.
So knowing those challenges, how do you help students get beyond their fear, to move beyond anger and depression, and to find resilience and growth?
Yeah, when you think about resilience, a lot of times resilience is something that needs to be taught. Because, children aren't born just understanding, I'm going to be resilient. So resilience comes from circumstances, things of that nature. And one of the things that we really talk about in our, in some of our parenting classes is that there are different types of parenting styles. So, there are about 4 or 5 different types of parenting styles. And so you have, authoritarian parents who are, just kind of demanding. Everything is their way or the highway. And so you also have what's called like permissive parents. And there are the parents who are they're automatically allowing their children to just do whatever they want to do. And of course, in this landscape, that's not a good thing, right? You can't do that. And then you have the neglectful and uninvolved parents. Sometimes their lives get so strenuous that they are not involved in their children's lives, and sometimes it's not so strenuous, they're just not involved. And so when those children don't have those parents who are responsive and who has a balance, which is one of the last types of parenting styles, which is authoritative. And that means you have a balance. You have a balance of knowing when to come in, knowing when to hold your children's hands, knowing when to let them go and let them experience for themselves. That's the balance that they need in order to have those children experience difficulties in their life. And that builds and that teaches resilience. So if you don't have that balance, children can also become detached. They can become, they can feel like they're not resilient enough to the point of they don't know how to handle pressures, emotional pressures. And so that's why we look at the smallest thing can set them off. The smallest thing, or they don't know how to cope. And once again, going back to the way that they're raised, those coping skills are very important based on how they're raised and the parenting styles. Do you have anything else?
I was going to say, Dr. Linda Peterson, can you talk to a little bit about the coping skills and strategies that schools and families can use to better support young people that are navigating right now through these challenges that you all are speaking of?
That's easy to speak to. I think it's harder to do. because when you talk about the resilience piece, he was just talking about going into those challenges. The resilience is not fixed, right? Resilience is not just like I wake up and I got a level of what I can get through. It can be built. It can be manipulated. It could be grown. It could be nourished, right? And so until you get that resilience, you can't face your challenges because you don't have the skills. So you have to start with understanding emotional keys, identifying and labeling where you are emotionally in order to navigate the fears and the challenges, right? And so with strategies that families and teens or students in general, even young adults, everyone can use is the first thing I was talking about when I was a kid, right? Building and having a caring adult, a relationship.
Strong relationship.
People don't realize that everything starts with a relationship. And as we're called changes therapeutics, everything begins with a change of thought, right? It's in that mind. And so until we navigate these challenges with understanding that I'm not alone first, right? Build that relationship, find the commonalities, social emotional learning in schools. That's what school counseling is about. That's what a lot of our pushes are right now, is to teach those skills that unfortunately some of our kids aren't coming to school with, right? How do you label I'm upset or I'm hurt or I'm pain without showing anger? How do you tell someone that, I love you when you've never gotten a hug? So being able to navigate those challenges, so you can do goal setting, you can do regular assessments in schools. And I know your community does that, right? Here at Confluence, you guys take a survey and data from the students and the staff, like, where are you? How are you feeling about these things, right? And so that's one way that I do recognize that you can use these things and these to work on your challenges. So teachers and staff need training in mental health literacy. They need trauma sensitivity training. They have to understand that families play a pivotal role in how we engage with our students.
Very good. I think earlier you were talking about the differences between the elementary school and, the transitioning of elementary school students all the way into middle school. And we talk a little bit more about the teenage brain. And we all know the teenage brain develops at a different pace than the younger students' brains. Can you tell us a little bit about some key things and parents and educators should know about the teenage brain?
So the teenage brain is like too many apps open at once. It's like running TikTok, doing your homework, hormones, self-discovery, endless craving for snacks, all while refusing software updates from your parents. Think about that. Expect random crashes, sudden bursts of genius, mood swings, and it makes you question if you're living with a philosopher sometimes or a stand-up comedian. That's what we used to do, because some of the things our kids used to say, I had to look at them and go, who child are you, right? So this is what the teenage brain is about. But the real thing is that it still doesn't develop. It just does not even develop till you're 26 years old. And research is showing that as you get older, they're pushing it back. But are they pushing it back because of the norms we've set as humans, right? That you're supposed to do these things? I just know the teenage brain can't take everything we give them. We say you can be 16 to drive, but you have to be 21 to drink. But you can drive a car and kill folks, but you can kill yourself at 21, right? So it's all kind of stuff that's happening that we tell teens, and we want their brains to tape it in. That frontal lobe is not even working, right? And then when they have these emotional dysregulations, 1 or 5 functions stop. They either stop listening, thinking, processing, understanding, all of that. One of those are going out the window. So you already have a sleep-deprived teen, right? That's another research-based issue that we're having. You already have an undeveloped brain. You have worldviews of what a 16-year-old can do, what an 18-year-old can do, what a 21-year-old can do, but yet your brain's not finished developing to 26. And then we give you all these responsibilities. Take care of your siblings, go home, get organized, clean the house, call your teacher, email a friend. And so then we want them to just not talk, because if they get a certain age and we understand, they go crazy. So we go, stop talking. You're good. Just do what I say. And then we don't understand the long-term planning. Meanwhile, the emotional center, the amygdala is going crazy. That frontal lobe, where it's supposed to be developing, all the way down to that somatic piece, they're struggling with it. That's day-to-day changes, conflicts, connections with people you probably shouldn't have connections with, conversations that are happening, instant gratification, do friends like me? All of that is happening in that teenage brain. And then we go, are you listening to me? No, I'm not, because I have like 20 things going on in my brain at the same time. So, and social skills have been depleted. Why? Because as Dr. Peterson was saying earlier, the pacifier is the new phone, right? And if I never have to engage, if I never have to give you eye contact, if I never have to shake your hand, if I never have to learn how to introduce myself in a public setting, if I never have to figure out how to become a friend in real life, right? Because now we have AI bots talking to us about being friends. So all of these things are happening with the teenage brain, and we just want them to come to school and learn.
What would you suggest that families could do to help create a healthier environment where you don't have all of these remote things that are already affecting the brain in its development?
Right. And that's one of the things that we also talk about a lot, because we need families to really recognize at what stage of development that their children are in and understand that. And sometimes because our brains are developing and we have had experiences and we've gone through different things that have taught us life lessons, we have to reach back to our teenage selves and understand that we made those decisions that were based on the undevelopment of our brain as well. And so just the understanding piece right there, starting with the understanding that your children are not doing this because they're naturally rebellious or they're trying to do things. They literally are operating under what we call their lizard brain. Okay, so there's a lizard brain and then there's a wizard brain. So that wizard brain is based on experiences, based on understanding, based on depth of knowledge, based on a lot of those things. However, that lizard brain is impulsive because those brains are not developed. So we have to understand, we have to go back to our teenage selves and say, okay, why is my child? There's a reason why your child is making these decisions. There's a reason why your child is doing these things. And so understanding them, but then being able to still reach them and teach them, because we have had our brains developed. We have gone through our experiences. So it just really starts with the understanding about where your children are, and then going back once again to being there, being that involved parent, being there all the time for your child. Not one of the helicopter parents or those uninvolved parents, but being that authoritative parent where you have a balance of good discipline, but then also empathy, understanding where your children are. And so that goes a lot. I'm probably going to mention the importance of relationships all throughout this, because we say it as educators, we say it, we understand it, but how much do we prioritize it? How much do we prioritize the relationships that we have with our children, from education, from teachers, from administrators, from parents on? So that's a priority. We have to begin there.
And I just want to end that, family dynamics are one of the strongest predictors of a teen's mental health resilience and long-term success. So if adolescents are still building their sense of identity, they're building their coping skills and emotional regulation, and the family environment often sets that foundation for how they see themselves and relate to the world. So at the heart of it, the teenagers thrive when they feel safe. And, just Maslow's hierarchy, safety is number two, right? And supported at home. So families don't need to be perfect. And I think that's what a lot of our families believe. Like, I can't share these things that's happening because we have to look a certain way or we have to appear a certain way. But no one has to be perfect. They just need to be intentional. Just intentional with your actions and understanding and some psychoeducation about why are these things occurring versus, using childhood trauma or generational curses or, trying to talk or scream at a child out of it, when you just really have to have that open dialogue and foster that autonomy and growth.
And I just wanted to add one other thing: create sacred family time. The kids have to know that you are there.
Yeah.
To prioritize the things that they're interested in. Attend their events. I mean, it doesn't matter if they're an athlete or if they're on the debate team. I know sometimes we prioritize Yeah, and especially like with sports, we tend to prioritize, oh, my child is a football player or a basketball player because that's the instant gratification. And sometimes we overlook like the academic piece or some of the more subtle type of things or what your children achieve. Know what your child is interested in. It doesn't have to be something that you did when you were growing up, but just understand what they were in and then let them know that family and family time is a priority. Okay. So they have to know that you care. And so make sure you do it.
Very good research practices in helping the healthy environments at home, and good feedback for parents sometimes that may not know what to do or where to start, but you've today given them some very key points on what they can do. You've worked with organizations such as Confluence Academies on implementing equitable practices. What does that look like in practice?
Oh, yeah. Yes, we worked with a number of organizations, and I was an administrator in the organization, and we prioritize equitable practices. A lot of times people, when they hear the word equity, I know it has been, become a bad word, so to speak, nowadays, but it's so much a depth to equity. A lot of times people think of equity and they think about a component of equity. So they may think about race, racial equity, or they may think about gender equity. But when you think about true equity is understanding that we all are different. We all bring challenges. We all bring gifts to the table. And so just recognizing that no one single person, even within a household, there can be many different components of equity within their own household. And so no one single person brings the same identical elements to the table. And so equity is really understanding that we're honoring, we're celebrating those gifts, we're helping support, and then we're not having our own biases that are associated with that because someone is not like us in a certain way. Because you have to understand that we all are different. So really making sure that you fight to make sure that our children are safe, our children grow to be healthy human beings, and understand in order for them to do that, we have to understand what their needs and their challenges are and make sure that we're addressing those needs and those challenges and being supportive. So that's very important when we think about equity because there are so many different components. It's a broad spectrum of what equity means, but understanding that there is quite a possible in the classroom, every child in there is different. And every child is going to come with a different set of circumstances of which you were raised. And when I was an administrator, I used to tell the teachers, I was like, a lot of times when we were in school, we were good students, right? We were A students or we played sports or we were involved in all of those things. And then you have this automatic assumption that the children, in order to be good students, have to be like you were. And that's not necessarily the case. You have to understand that all children come with different sets of circumstances and they may not end up doing some of the things that you did or what you value as a strong student or whatever the case may be, but have to understand that we have to support them on their journeys.
So both of you all have had leadership positions in your current and your past employment. How does stress and unresolved conflict impact the workplace, like the culture of the workplace, and what tools can you provide leaders to build stronger and more cohesive teams?
Stress. Use the word culture. A lot of times we use culture and climate in the workplace as synonymous terms, and they're not. They're not synonymous terms. I always ask people, I was like, okay, so then what's the difference? And so when you think about true culture, culture is the way that we do business. So it's a way that we move about in our day, in our day-to-day interaction. So it's the structures that we put in place, the rules, the regulations, all those things. Climate is how people feel about the organization, right? And so I always say that culture dictates climate, meaning that if the culture is not there and the culture of an organization is not there and it's not correctly, it's not built correctly, it's not implemented correctly, then that's going to have a direct correlation to how people feel about the organization, which is climate. And so it's very important to recognize that as leaders, we have to develop a positive culture that will in turn lead to a positive climate. So when stress comes up and issues in the workplace come and there are things that are happening that can create a hostile environment, we have to understand that we have an obligation as leaders to make sure that we're doing our very best to maintain a strong, positive culture that would in turn make sure that people are satisfied and working to their fullest potential, which in turn build a positive climate.
Yeah, I agree with that. And stress and unresolved conflict in any organization just doesn't impact the individual, right? You can go to work disgruntled. It impacts everybody because it's a ripple effect across the workplace and the culture. It's often subtle, though, right? It can start off really subtle and you don't even recognize it. But then the erosion of trust happens, right? Or lower morale and engagement or absenteeism. So a lot of the school districts from COVID on and across the nation lost educators. And so you have to ask yourself, what made this, and at least I'm one of them, right? What made those people want to say, you know what, enough's enough, right? Was it the culture? Was it the climate of what was happening at the time during COVID? Was it what happened after COVID? All the things we had to really look at and say, hey, education has to change. Right? Why are we still doing it the old way when we found new ways to do it? And it may not have been the best way, but we did. So when you have an impact on your workplace culture and climate, you can have toxic communication patterns. It can reduce innovation and creativity, meaning you don't have that, let's try these ideas and things. People stop, right? You stop wanting to come to work. I deal with individual psychotherapy clients all the time. And every once in a while, we'll get documentation for FMLA paperwork, right? And one of the things that stands out is that I find that the employee doesn't trust the employer to help them through whatever's happening at the time, even though, and as Dr. Peterson said, all the way through this, we're going to talk about relationships, right? And that's because no one sees them. They see them either as a number, they see them as just a product, they see them as a replaceable entity within their organization. And the person doesn't have buy-in, right? No one has the buy-in. So as a leader, you have to look at all of that when you talk about workplace culture and climate, because if you don't have trust, you don't have much.
Yeah, and that trickles down. So that as a leader, if you haven't built that culture, it trickles down to the classroom. And as Dr. Peterson said, kids, absenteeism start happening because they feel like their teachers are not supporting them. They haven't built a culture in the classroom because it's a top-down effect. And what's that Teddy Roosevelt saying? People don't care that you know until they know that you care.
Right.
And so it just goes back to their relationships, building that proper culture and climate, because it's going to have a direct impact on your students.
One of the things that I was thinking about as you were speaking about is what the root cause is. And part of that root cause is understanding stress, understanding next steps with stress. And you all have often say that the real change starts within. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, so I say that a lot because, one, our agency is also a Christian-based agency. And so I always start with the renewing of the mind. When you think of anything that's ever happened in your life, it'll always begin in your mind. I don't care if it's what you're going to put on, what you're going to eat, who you're going to call. Everything begins in the mind, right? And so until you understand how to change that, what that can look like, right? You're setting yourself up to be stagnant in your growth because we are quick to want to change the external, right? I want to go work out. I want to go lose weight. I want to go to this school because this district said it had this. I want to drive that car because it gives me prestige, right? But as you're driving that car, as you're going to that school, as you're doing all these things, you're still the same in the inside. So it's like taking, from one job to the other, wondering why none of the jobs are working when you haven't did any self-personal reflection. And so self-personal reflection is the one thing that impacts that renewing of the mind. Am I doing what I should be doing, how I should be doing it, when I should be doing it, and how effective is it, right? Doing the same thing over and over again means what? Insanity. So you have is insanity. So you have to pause and say, you know what? At this point, that didn't work the last 10 times. What should I be doing?
So when you talk about the root cause and you talk about the challenges that persons have to deal with starting in the mind, one thing comes to mind is how does oneself understand their own self-worth, where they want to change those things and become a foundation, like for overcoming external barriers, whether it's in life, whether it's in work or school?
Well, acknowledging your self-worth is hard. It's hard for me sometimes, right? We get in that space that we feel like, I'll just use a clinical term, imposter syndrome, right? So you acknowledge yourself is like having a VIP badge. You walk in and you're like, I'm here, right? And then it's like being at a club and you can get to walk right in. But you're not having that. Guess what you're going to do? You're going to stand in line and hope somebody see you. So until you build your own self-worth, right, it's like when we truly acknowledge our self-worth, it creates that anchor inside of us. That anchor reminds us that no matter what obstacles we face, bias, rejection, setback, stress, we are not defined by those barriers. Instead, we approach those challenges with confidence and resilience because our value isn't dependent on external approval, but a lot of people seek that. That goes back to that mindset, right? That external approval. It's that inner belief that allows us to push through. If you believe you can or if you believe you can't, you're right.
Wait.
Well, I can tell you that we have truly enjoyed the collaboration and here with Confluence Academies, obviously, and your organization has been collaborating with us for quite some time. How would you say that your organization has impacted communities and what's unique about your partnership compared to everyone else?
One of the things that we feel like we have a spirit for giving back to the communities, building relationships. As we say, we spoke of relationships all throughout this. And so another thing that I have really a passion for are children. And so every time I come through the doors of any of the districts that we work with today, when I came through the doors of Confluence and I saw some girls trying to create a TikTok videos, and I was like, it just warms my heart to know that our value comes in the fact that we are helping the future generation, the generation that's going to be taking over and leading us and supporting us. And so it's so very important that we are the ones who are out there helping them be the best selves that they can be. And I know there are a lot of extenuating circumstances and there are a lot of barriers that they want to overcome. So but we're just glad that we're able to partner with Confluence Academies to make sure that we're putting things in place to make sure that we are helping all children overcome those barriers and supporting all of them. And so once again, it's my guiding light just to think about children and just think about their success. And when I can partner with a district or an environment or organization that has that same guiding light, that's what drives me.
How can our listeners get in contact with you? How can they get the same resources that we've been blessed to get? What are some things that you can provide or say today that our listeners would know what to do next in reaching out to the two of you?
Well, you can find us on our website, which is changestherapeutics.org. Or you can give us a call. Our office number is 314-368-2409. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn because we do a lot of the professional engagements on there with a lot of the organizations. And so we're there anytime. We have about 16 therapists that could help. We have marriage and family therapists. We have life coaches. We have just partnered with another institution with 3 nurses, and we're going to have them work with us with some anxiety and depression and get people screened and some understandings of those things. So we're there. All you have to do is reach out and we will return your call. Give us 24 hours, but we will return your call.
And one of the things that Linda didn't mention is that we really like to tailor our support and our services based on the organization's needs.
Or the individual.
Or the individual's needs. And so we really are here to listen, to understand what an organization or an individual need, and then we can say, here's how we can help. And there are different areas that we're working with grants. We're working with the foster care community as well. And so we're just working in very different capacities about all. So just feel free to reach out to us And even if you don't know what you don't know, we can help you get there.
Thank you, Dr. Petersons, for joining us today. And for our listeners, like and subscribe, Confluence Conversations. We look forward to our next podcast.